Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones was ambushed by TMZ at an airport, which is admittedly kind of weird, but he did have something interesting to say about Matt Ryan. We'll talk about it next on AJC Falcons News Now.
This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams and former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith.
Hello everybody, welcome to AJC Falcons News Now. My name is Brandon Adams. Normally in this spot every Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, you see me getting a chance to speak to former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith. Chuck is on assignment today, doing some work, helping some guys get ready for the NFL draft. So we are very lucky today to have former Falcons wide receiver Terrence Mathis, one of the all-time greats in this organization, a former all-pro receiver,
yes.
and just a real thrill to have you part of the program. Terrence, thanks so much for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get a lot of your thoughts on kind of how things are going with the Falcons right now. Obviously, a lot of what's going to happen in 2020 for this team is about finding a way to kind of return to form offensively. So obviously, you'll have some great things to say about that. But for a lot of our folks, you know, they remember your great Falcons career. They may not be fully acquainted with what you're doing right now. I see you've got the Pinecrest Academy shirt on here today. Great to see that. You're the coach there at that school here in the Atlanta area. Just give us a little bit of an update on kind of how your coaching career has gone.
Well, right now I just finished my third year at Pinecrest Academy High School up in Cumming, Georgia. It's been a great experience for me. You know, when you're able to be a head coach and run your program. You've been in so many different programs under so many different coaches from every level. So you take a little bit of what they have and you put it into what you have and try to make it special. And I think we've done a great job at Pinecrest Academy. We have 3-4 former NFL players on the staff, and it's just an enjoyable time.
Well, I think it's really cool here in the Atlanta area. You know, at Pinecrest is an example of this, but there's also some other schools where this is true too, where we have so many former NFL guys that live in the city of Atlanta, whether it be former Falcons like yourself. You also played for other teams, but former Falcons such as yourself. Well, we have so many, NFL guys that have kind of chosen to make this their home after their career is done. A lot of them have got into coaching. Right. So if you pay attention a lot of the high school games on Friday night and things like that, you are going to see, I recognize that name. He's coaching here now, and that name's coaching here now. Yes. I mean, I can say this as someone who cares about the high school football scene in this community. To see guys such as yourself kind of pouring back into that next generation of football player, I think that's a really cool thing for our community. And I think you would say that there are certain things that you learn from a long NFL career that you really have to have had that experience to gain that knowledge and be able to pour that into kind of like that next generation of player. That's a really cool thing.
It's really cool. You have an opportunity to take everything you've learned, all the resources that you've learned at every level, and put it into your program. And then when you see these young men excel in it, it's everybody always equate greatness by winning and losing. But for us and what we do at Pinecrest, we try to develop the whole young man spiritually and whatsoever academically, because we try to give them life skills and get them prepared for when they leave high school and go on to the next thing. They all going to graduate. Yeah. And so we try to teach them how to graduate and move forward and be great in everything that they do.
Keenan Lewis watches on YouTube. He's glad to see Terrence Mathis on the program today. I am there as well. There's a lot going on with Atlanta right now I want to get into. Before that, though, how about just a general thought from you of 1-7 start for the Falcons? At that point in time, it looked pretty dire. It looked like Dan Quinn's job might even been in trouble. This team played much better than the second half of the year. Arthur Blank makes the decision to bring back Thomas Dimitrov, bring back Dan Quinn. Was that the right move? And do you think Atlanta is set up heading towards 2020 in a position to be able to enjoy more success than maybe Falcons fans experience for most of really the last couple of years?
We had this conversation last year at the end of the season.
Seems like it, right?
What does the Falcons need to do to get to the next level? And I said nothing. Okay. At the end of the day, they have a good nucleus there in Atlanta. They have great players, have a good coaching staff, management is good. The thing is that at some point, the leaders in the locker room going to have to pull those guys up, and they got to play at a high level. As you see, there was a tale of two seasons, pretty much first half, second half. Right. And that was good to see, because now you can build on that. I think if you kept playing the way you were playing the first half of the season, you might have seen a lot of changes. But as you see, this is a good football team when they are playing on all cylinders.
And they certainly were for the second half of the year. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. That's former Falcons receiver Terrence Mathis. My name's Brandon Adams. Good to have you with us, and we really appreciate Miller Lite making it all possible. The official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it's just 96 calories. Now, interesting, I guess, going down over the course of the weekend. Julio Jones, like we've seen a lot of these videos over the last couple of years, he's getting off an airplane, he's there at the airport, he's kind of taking care of his business, really kind of minding his own business. And lo and behold, out of nowhere, here comes like the TMZ camera. Sort of stick it right in his face. We see this happen with celebrities all the time. All of a sudden, now we're in kind of a media age where athletes are treated like celebrities. Julio Jones really no different here. Lots of questions being kind of fired his way about, hey, what do you think about all these quarterbacks in the draft? You went to Alabama. What do you think about Tua Tagovailoa? And blah, 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 blah. Then at one point in time, the TMZ interviewer says, well, listen, Atlanta's got the 16th pick. Should Atlanta consider drafting a quarterback like a Tua or like a, somebody who might be there? Should Atlanta be thinking about drafting one of these quarterbacks? And Julio Jones, for the most part, just trying to get the TMZ guy out of his face. So I'm not going to tell you he's thinking a ton about what the TMZ guy says. But he does offer a bit of a defense of Matt Ryan from the notion that Atlanta would draft a quarterback at number 16 overall. Here is what Julio Jones told TMZ about Matt Ryan and how Atlanta should handle that number 16 pick. Take a listen to this.
Should the Falcons draft any of these guys,
I mean, we got our franchise quarterback there, Matt Ryan. So,
it was a tough season.
Yeah, but the general manager, he got to do his thing. You know what I'm saying? The general manager, everybody, that's their job to kind of handle all that stuff, man. It's a great talent coming out, but every year is always great talent coming out.
So listen, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that Julio Jones is putting a lot of thought into that one way or another because, frankly, it's just kind of weird that if you're just minding your own business in the airport, all of a sudden somebody's got that camera right in your face asking you questions. It is a very different kind of thing that the athletes of this day have to deal with. Just a lot of the media landscape is just a lot different than it used to be, right?
It is, and it's a good thing, because now you're more marketable whatsoever, and plus you got to make sure you stay button up all the time.
Listen, I mean, I know for me, forget about just saying the right thing. Sometimes if I'm getting off an airplane, there's a chance maybe I haven't shaved that day, a little disheveled looking, maybe my clothes don't quite match the way they're supposed to. I mean, you have to be thinking about all that kind of stuff if you're Julio Jones going out in public. You never know who, if it's not a TMZ person, it's just some regular person that says, oh, there's Julio Jones. Let me take out my phone and start filming. If you're Julio Jones, you do have to be thinking about that stuff a lot more.
You have to. Even myself, when I go to the grocery store, I make sure I look proper because I don't want anybody to say, oh, look at him. What's wrong with him? What is going on with him? So at the end of the day, when you do step out in public, you do have to have this kind of look about you that you got it all together. And should it be that way? That's not me to answer whatsoever, but that's just the way of the media and the way of the world right now.
But in particular, what Julio says about Matt Ryan, I find kind of interesting. He says, no, we shouldn't draft a quarterback at number 16 overall. We have our franchise quarterback. And I think that phrase, franchise quarterback, is a really interesting thing to use because, Terrence, I think there are really two kinds of NFL teams. There are NFL teams that know they've got quarterback figured out, and there are NFL teams who aren't sure they have quarterback figured out. And what Julio Jones is saying there, I think, is you're going to put my team in the category of we have our franchise quarterback. Now, for how many more years? Only time will tell on that. But for now, Ryan's still in his prime. Julio's still in his prime. And Julio, who's essentially popular with everybody, kind of throws his support behind Matt Ryan there at that statement. I do think that's an important thing for Falcons fans to remember. In a year of unrest where Atlanta got off to a start that was obviously, pretty not a good start overall. In a year of that, Julio Jones says, don't get it twisted. We still have our franchise quarterback, and that matters, doesn't it?
It really matters because when your all-world player says, we have a franchise quarterback, I believe in him, you got to take him for his word. But do you draft a quarterback in the 16th pick? I say no. I say you may wait to the third round or so because at the end of the day, Matt Ryan cannot play forever. Look how it worked out for the Green Bay Packers. You had Brett Favre there. They drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round, and he sat for 3 or 4 years. And look, Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be a Hall of Famer one day, Super Bowl champion, whatsoever. So it's not saying that you need a quarterback and you're getting rid of your franchise quarterback. What are you saying is, I'm preparing myself for the future.
That's right.
So I got to go out and get a quality quarterback. Hey, he may not, play for a few years, but he get a chance to sit behind a guy like a Matt Ryan and see Julio Jones and Ridley and all those guys and be ready to play when it's time.
I was watching the NFC game yesterday between the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers. Talk about franchise quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, two guys at the top of their game. two of the the biggest names in the sport. And as I'm watching that game back and forth, I was actually thinking a bit about Matt Ryan. For as many things as Russell Wilson does, magical on a football field, Aaron Rodgers much the same way. In 4 total playoff meetings against those two guys, Ryan's record overall in the playoffs against Wilson and Rodgers 3-1. 2 games against Rodgers, 2 games against Wilson. The only game he lost was to Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay Packers, a few years ago prior to the win in the NFC Championship game.
Yes.
So that gives you an idea of what Ryan can be, what he has been in big spots in a playoff game before. Now, the postseason record for Ryan's not perfect, and there's no guarantee that you'll recapture the magic this team had in 2016. But you say plenty about Russell Wilson, you say plenty about Aaron Rodgers, 2 big-time franchise quarterbacks. In duels against those guys before, Matt Ryan has won that. And I think that's one of the reasons why when Julio Jones calls Ryan, even if it's in the TMZ interview, when you call him a franchise quarterback, that's the language that's really appropriate for what Ryan's been for the Falcons.
That's true, but when you talk about franchise quarterbacks and you put those names like Wilson and Rodgers in the same system with a Ryan, the thing is where people get upset is these other 2 quarterbacks are consistently winning their division or top 2 in their division and consistently going to the playoffs. And that's what people want to see. That's what the fans want to see from Matt Ryan. If he's a franchise quarterback, we want to see consistency of winning the division and getting into the playoffs.
No, I think that's fair. And I'll take a few comments here on this topic. Rod Williams, a little critical of Matt Ryan here in our Facebook comment section. I think, Terrence, as having been in Atlanta before and been a professional athlete here, I think you understand that even though I am still incredibly supportive of Ryan and still believe that Ryan is supposed to be the nucleus, the focal point of this Falcons offense moving forward. If you are a highly paid franchise quarterback kind of coming off of a non-playoff season, whether it be Rod Williams here on our Facebook comment section or others, there is going to be some criticism that comes from that, right?
Of course, because, this is the way of the world. When you get paid a whole lot of money, you're supposed to produce.
Yeah.
And when you are labeled the franchise quarterback or the franchise player, you're supposed to produce. And that's what people are just saying. They're not mad at him or dislike Matt Ryan, but the performance has to equal up to what people say you are.
Yeah.
And that's a franchise quarterback, and that you are paid accordingly because of your performance.
Along those same lines, Willie Hill on Facebook says what we need from Matt Ryan's a big running back that can make some big plays now. And that's obviously something when Chuck Smith, who's normally here, he and I have talked about this a lot. The Atlanta running game this season is almost non-existent. Now, if you watch the playoffs this weekend, you got very conflicting information on this. You watch the Tennessee Titans run all over the Baltimore Ravens, and that says, hey, you've got to have a great running back like Derrick Henry. That's the way that you're going to win games right now, have a really good running back like this. And yet you watch the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday. The Kansas City Chiefs essentially used their running backs really not at all, and they're come from behind win against the Houston Texans. So there's more than one way to do it. Some teams lean heavily on running backs like the Titans. Some teams don't do that very much at all like the Chiefs. But for Atlanta, in their case in particular, there just really wasn't much of a running game this year. How much would you like to see Atlanta address that running back spot near the front end of the draft, whether it be in the first round or one of those 2 second-round picks?
Well, I think, you go for a running back in the second round. I think in today's game, you need a running back because you do need to scare a team that you could run the football at some point. You don't want people to pin their ears back and get in a sprinter stance and come after your quarterback every single down. At the end of the day, you can have running back by committee. I think Freeman had too much load on him this year. I think you can bring in another guy. You can have a 1-2 punch. You can have a guy that's 225, 230 pounds go out and do a great job, and then you can have Freeman come in and be that change of pace back. But at the end of the day, the way the Falcons' offense is tailored, it's more of a play action pass type offense.
Right.
And Matt Ryan cannot sit back there 50 times a game and just sit back there and wait for guys to get open or avoid the pass rush or whatsoever. So I think you need some of that play action in that offense with these weapons that they have.
And really one of your great seasons for the Falcons, you want to go back to the 1998 NFC Championship winning team, the team that made away with the Super Bowl, the notion of that play action pass when you have a running back like Jamal Anderson, what he was for the Falcons back then, have a quarterback like Chris Chandler when healthy, to utilize the play action the way that Dan Reeves offense did back then. I mean, as a receiver, you benefited from that so much because safeties couldn't be quite sure of what to do. Does the safety go back and give a cornerback extra help and on you or Curtis Martin, or do you kind of slide? I should say Tony Martin slide towards the line of scrimmage to guard against Jamal Anderson? If you have a good play action pass offense, it does open up a lot of things for the wide receivers.
It does. When you bring 8 and 9 guys in the box and try to stop the running game, that puts your better receivers one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then that's what you want. You want one-on-one with a defensive back because you should win your one-on-one battles as a wide receiver. So now when you have 8 or 9 guys in the box and you have that play action, that safety has to run maybe 8 yards from the line of scrimmage to try to get 18 yards to try to get to you. By that time, it's too late.
Let me read Lisa Spears' comment here on Facebook, who says that we will get a quarterback at some point in time beyond Matt Ryan, but not now because Matt Ryan's not going yet. She says it's 1 to 2 more years, and who's going to be here? It'll be perfect timing to get Trevor Lawrence. She says maybe after that. Just wait for that window. But it's still open with Matt Ryan right now with our roster. Brotherhood, Super Bowl 2021. This chick knows and loves my Atlanta Falcons. So Lisa, an example of a group of Falcons fans still solidly behind Matt Ryan. And honestly, I think that's probably the right way to be. I do think if Atlanta makes a run towards success, whether it be getting back to a Super Bowl or just getting back to the playoffs, we'll have more on that obviously coming up later on our show. But if there is a big turnaround coming for Dan Quinn while he's coach here of this organization, I think having that be led by Ryan and Julio and those important parts of this Falcons offense, for me, that's virtually the only way that's going to happen, is building around those guys. To me, is still the recipe for success for this team.
Well, they have the pieces offensively. I'm not worried about this team offensively whatsoever. What I'm worried about is that defense being on the field so long during the game. So I think truly you got to address the defensive side of the ball, the back end, and even that front four. I think you need, right in the middle, Grady Jarrett is doing a great job, and you have guys right there in the middle that can put pressure, but you don't have that guy that's on the outside that can get around the corner and make pressure to force the quarterback to step up where Grady can get there and sack people. I think, right now, first rounder, you have to go get a defensive end that can rush the quarterback.
Well, when I say to Chuck, you sound like Chuck Smith sitting over there saying that because you know how much Chuck loves the pass rush.
Right.
But when he and I talk about this, the one thing I always say back to him is that one of the reasons why I would also favor that pass rushing edge rusher type is because if you don't get one of those early, they're not typically there late. That's one of those positions where there's just not enough of them to go around. People seem to act fast. Sometimes when it comes to running backs and in certain positions like that, even offensive linemen from time to time, you can go later in the draft and find someone that you like. When it comes to the true quality edge rushers, there's such a huge gap with that first group to go and that group that'll go in later rounds. Big gap there.
You might have 4 guys in first 2 rounds that can come in and impact the team for you right away, and you have to get them early. You have to go get one early. At the end of the day, this city is looking for that wow player. We want to draft that wow player that's going to make a difference where now we can go out and get jerseys and support this guy. Now he's the other franchise player we have with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. That's what they're looking for. You got to give us that. And you give us that. Watch the brotherhood outside of the locker room form with this Atlanta Falcons.
I think that's a really good point because I've only lived in Atlanta my whole life, so I can't necessarily make an accurate comparison between Atlanta and other cities. But you said Atlanta is looking for that wow player. Isn't there something true about this city where we do gravitate towards those big names? We like the idea of, when a Michael Vick comes into the city, for instance, sort of takes the town over. When Matt Ryan initially comes in the league, it's kind of the same kind of thing. Deion Sanders, years before that. There is something about that really big name, and if it can be a really big personality, this city more than maybe seemingly others, other towns maybe a little bit more blue collar, a little bit more whatever. There's a little bit of a Hollywood aspect to what goes on here where our town seems to like the idea of that big splash move when you can make it.
We want to say he's ours.
Yeah, that's right.
That's our guy. You can say whatever you want to say about everybody else, but this is our guy. And that's what this city wants. Like you said, you named a few, Deion Sanders, Michael Vick, whatsoever. They want to be able to grab him and say, this is our guy. And at the end of the day, this guy has to sell tickets on the road.
Right.
That's when you know that's the guy, where he goes into other stadiums and the night before or the morning of, when the newspaper comes out or the news come out, he's in town.
That's right, yeah.
That dude is in town and everybody's coming to see him. And that's what we can get that guy in the first round.
I like the idea of that. Iron Mike, by the way, loves seeing Terrence Mathis, the former Atlanta Falcons wide receiver here, seeing a lot of great comments on both Facebook and YouTube about having Terrence in here today. We really appreciate those. Y'all keep those coming. Also, Anthony Wright mentions this on YouTube. And Terrence, I want to bring you into the topic we've been having on the show for the last few weeks about what Atlanta should do with its draft pick. One of the things that Anthony mentions is when you look at the situation with the Falcons' offensive line. Now, Atlanta goes with 2 first-round picks on the right side a year ago. Right. Lindstrom, the guard, McGarry, the tackle. Obviously, you got the veteran Jake Mathis as your left tackle spot, and still in the middle, at least for now, Alex Mack, your center. But Anthony Wright would like to see the Falcons address that left guard spot where there is a little bit of unrest. They've thrown a lot of bodies into that fray to try to compete there for that. But at a certain point in time, when you've invested as many resources as the Falcons have with their offensive line, whether it be money for Matthews, money for Mack, draft capital for Lindstrom and McGarry, at a certain point in time, you've almost done as much as can be done, even if you don't quite have it perfect yet. And the numbers would tell you the Falcons' offensive line was far from perfect. Right. But can you really afford to spend a whole lot more draft capital and a whole lot more free agent dollars in a position group where Atlanta has done that a lot in recent years?
You can't go get a young guy offensive line. If we just talked about, we started the show with your franchise quarterback.
Right.
If you want him to continue to be your franchise quarterback, you can't put young people in front of him and expect them to hold up and expect your franchise quarterback to play at a high level. Can you go in free agency and get a guy? Yes, you can. I think that's the way to go. I don't know how much money you have, or much money you want to spend on a guard in free agency, but you have to go do that. If you want to continue to get better and build on what you've built on at the end of the season, you got to go with free agency and get that guard and help solidify that offensive line.
And of course, on YouTube Slam, Bradley also reminding us that the other big free agent decision Atlanta's going to make at some point in time is what happens with guys like Devondre Campbell in particular, that big free agent on the defensive side of a name a lot of Falcons fans would like to see brought back into the mix if it is indeed possible. Let me take a few Facebook comments here, and we will get ready to move on because there's a couple other big items of note when it involves the Falcons I want to get to here today. Dwayne Coleman says, if we get another offense, I'm done. And for now, Atlanta's obviously going to keep the same offense, not just the same, the same general makeup, but from a philosophical standpoint, making the decision to maintain Dirk Koetter, bringing him back as offensive coordinator. Terrence, I don't have to tell you that was a little bit of a controversial move, just in given the fact that at times, I don't know that the Falcons have gotten the best out of Matt Ryan. I don't know that the Falcons have gotten the best out of Julio Jones. I saw moments in which, I thought Atlanta had an opportunity to be a little bit more innovative and a little bit more in line with some of the things I see working for other NFL teams. For all the talk that was had during the season of Dan Quinn's managing the defense and at first being defensive coordinator, then sort of relinquishing some of that responsibility. Kind of quietly, I thought a subpar Atlanta Falcons offense maybe didn't get quite as much media attention this year. And as Dwayne says, that decision of is Atlanta going to maintain the same offensive philosophy that Dirk Koetter had in place, that's just as big an offseason question as really anything is.
It really is, because over the last 3 or 4 years, you haven't had any continuity in the offensive game plan and what they were doing offensively. We tend to beat up Matt Ryan a lot, but this is his 3rd offensive coordinator in the last 3 or 4 years. So you got to understand this. It's going to take some time when you bring in a new offense and a new system for them to buy into it and really gel with it. But I think keeping Dirk Koetter is the best thing to do, because now, you have some continuity going into the offseason and going into the new year. Now, to me, let's open up the playbook.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
You got all these toys and all these weapons. Let's open up the playbook now. Let's do some more creative stuff. Matt Ryan, he can get it done. He can move in the pocket. He can roll. He can do all those things. Just do it.
Well, my thought has been, Terrence, that if you don't have a Derrick Henry-style running back, and if you don't have a bunch of Pro Bowlers in your offensive line, then it seems to me when you do have a Ryan in place and you do have really good receivers in place, Why not take advantage of what they bring to the table and do something from a schematic standpoint that minimizes the importance of your offensive line? To me, I think Atlanta is crying out to do what some other NFL teams have found success with: play more quick strike, more up-tempo, where you're not asking offensive linemen to block quite as long, where the value of the running game is minimized because of the fact that you're treating short passes almost like a running game. That's what I'd love to see Atlanta have more of, which is just a little bit more of a quick strike offense that looks a little bit like what Cliff Kingsbury's doing in Arizona, or what McVay's doing in Los Angeles. Something that's a little bit more like that.
I would like to see the analytics on when Matt Ryan goes into the huddle and comes out of the huddle, what the performance level is then when he's at the line of scrimmage calling plays. Because to me, from an outsider looking in, when they play up tempo, they are very, very good. And Matt Ryan is very, very consistent and efficient at that. And I think that's the way to go. I'm not saying doing it the whole game, but at points you got to go fast, because it does not allow the defense to call defensive situations or formations to try to stop you offensively. So they got to stay basic and stay base, what we call it, and then they just got to play whatever it is. But when you go into the huddle and you get that play, the defense get a chance to get the play calls in, now you have a chance to stop them. But at the end of the day, I think you should go up-tempo with Matt Ryan a little bit more, maybe 70% of the time. And I think you'll see a better outcome offensively.
Well, Mark Brantley, watching us on Facebook, was saying kind of the same thing, saying no huddle, no huddle, no huddle. It seems to me, and I'm like you, I don't have the analytics in front of me, but it seems to me that when Ryan given a chance to play fast in a no huddle situation, that seems to be, during his career, something he's thrived in. And maybe these Falcons wide receivers could also thrive in an environment like that as well. We'll see, though, what kind of changes Atlanta does look to make offensively as we head towards 2020. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. That's former Falcons wide receiver Terrence Mathis. My name is Brandon Adams. Thanks for being with us here today. And I want to remind you that if you want the most in-depth Falcons coverage possible as we head towards the 2020 NFL Draft and the start of a new season, now before you know it'll be here, the best way to get that most in-depth Falcons coverage is by becoming an AJC subscriber. You can read about not just the news happening in your community, but also more great news involving your Atlanta Falcons. So check out the website, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. Once again, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. When you get there, you see a variety of different subscription choices. You can get 7-day home delivery. All the different options include the daily e-paper sent right to your device. If you just want Sunday home delivery, if you only want to read the e-paper right there on your laptop or your phone or your iPad, whatever else, that's an option for you there as well. But any one you choose, any of those subscription options, as a way of saying thank you to you, we've got this officially branded Falcons cooler. Of course, the AJC is a proud partner of the Atlanta Falcons. One of the ways we show that is with this officially branded Falcons cooler, a complimentary gift to you for becoming an AJC subscriber. So check that out, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. We do have some official news from the Falcons coming out over the weekend. They let it be known that Tosh Lupoi, who I kind of think of as a college coach, who was a terrific recruiter at Alabama, spent this past year with the Cleveland Browns, that coaching staff blown out. Cleveland's loss will be Atlanta's game here. Lupoi named defensive line and run game coordinator for the defensive ends for the Atlanta Falcons. In addition to his recruiting prowess, and Lupoi was a very good recruiter in college, he's also thought of as a pretty sharp defensive mind. And Terrence, this for me is just, I guess, further embodiment of an attempt to get it right defensively after, admittedly, Atlanta's had to go with a couple different defensive coordinators in the Quinn era. Quinn himself was one of those defensive coordinators to start the 2019 year. But now this is going to be Raheem Morris's defense, and Lupoi is going to be a part of that. And Jeff Ulbricht's coming back in kind of an enhanced role. There's some shifting and moving, but now I think that Quinn's going to say, we're feeling better about this staff being put in place. How much can be expected now with Raheem Morris as defensive coordinator, bringing in a guy like Lupoi? Do you see an opportunity for this Falcons defense to get better?
I love it.
Okay, good.
The reason I love it is because Raheem Morris has an intensity about him that he will get in your face and he's going to high five you, going to jump around, but he's going to be fair, he's going to be hard, but he's going to love you at the same time. You need coaches around players that can uplift them. you can teach them X's and O's
Yeah.
and say, hey, here it is, here's the game plan whatsoever. But you got to be able to, I know you're saying, well, how should you motivate grown men who make a whole lot of money? Hey, let me tell you something. When you see your coach out there running around, high-fiving, doing drills whatsoever, and he's sweating, and he gets you motivated because you're going, okay, my coach is doing this.
Right.
I should be doing it too. And that's the kind of coaches that Dan Quinn is putting together right now on that defensive side of the ball, and I love it.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to the value of a position coach like what Lepoy could potentially bring to the table, it's all about the fact that in the NFL, the talent difference is so thin that it's that little extra edge, that 1 or 2% that you can find. And sometimes that is a motivational thing. Sometimes that is a, hey, just be more focused on your opponent. Other times, though, that position coach provides an opportunity to get that technique a little bit better, which also can be the way you find that extra 1 or 2%. This is not like college football, and I love college football, but in college football, most games are won by a talent advantage.
Yes.
One side just way better than the other, just better overall raw talent. In the NFL, the talent is, for the most part, relatively even, across teams. It's about finding that particular edge on that particular Saturday. That's what your position coaches have a chance to do for you, right?
That's who he is. He has to find a way to bring the best out of you. He has to find a way that what makes you tick, what can you do well that's going to help us and put you in situations to be successful. Now he may see some things that maybe he can get a little better here. Let's work on this a little bit more, and that would help you be a more complete football player. You can't go in and just say, hey, this is who you are and this is who you're going to be. That's not true, because we all have something inside of us that we can bring out to make us better. And that's what a position coach is supposed to do.
Leon Cosby says change is good. And I think sometimes a little bit of change can be a little bit of just a new spark. And, obviously from the top end of this organization, head coach going to remain, general manager going to remain, but bringing in some new blood, new influences, a guy like Lepoy, there's a chance that new blood does provide a little bit of a spark.
I'm telling you, when you bring in someone new and he's excited, and he's going to bring some excitement, I think that is very, very good. And like you said, sometimes you got to make change from the top to the bottom, to move people around, to get people stirred up whatsoever, and to bring out the best in everybody in the whole organization.
By the way, Keith Wolford wanted to talk on Facebook a little bit more about Raheem Morris. You said a moment ago you like that transition for him. It is interesting. Morris is one of those guys that's obviously been a former head coach in this league, but to start the year as a position coach on the offensive side of the ball, shift to defense during the season, and as Keith pointed out, it seemed like the group played better with Morris's influence, so much so that now he's defensive coordinator. It's been, as a coach yourself now, I'm sure you have appreciation for this, it's been quite a professional ride for Morris. The highs of being a head coach, the lows of kind of not really knowing where you're going from there, and all of a sudden now back being a coordinator again.
He's a defensive coach.
Yeah.
He's been a defensive coach. He's been a defensive-minded player. He's been a defensive person ever since he's been in the NFL. What he did on the offensive side of the ball is people say, well, he couldn't have done that. Yes, he made that receiver group tougher. He made them tougher, and he made them accountable for each other and accountable for their play. So that's what he's bringing to the defensive side of the ball. And as you've seen, that they played a lot better in the second half with him running the show. Yeah.
By the way, Slam Bradley asking good questions about the future of Gono, maybe being part of that left guard situation. Deidre Sanat, those are really good questions for D. Orlando Ledbetter. And Slam, I'm sure those are something that D-Led will be looking forward to talk to Quinn about here really soon. Thanks for the comment, Slam. JJ Blue, also in the subject of Austin Hooper, the Falcons' really good tight end, and that's obviously a really big off-season topic. We addressed this on Friday's show about, will Atlanta spend the big bucks to re-sign Hooper, and given the salary cap tension the organization's facing, can they actually afford to do this? I'm a big believer that if Thomas Dimitroff and Rich McKay, the brass of this organization, if they're going to say, yeah, the salary cap stuff has been overblown, we're not that worried about it. To me, Terrence, the way that you prove that is go out there and re-sign Austin Hooper, because Julio Jones is not going to be as good without him. Calvin Ridley's not going to be as good without him. Matt Ryan's not going to be as good without him. You're an offense that needs all of its playmakers available to be as good as this group can be. And if the Falcons are going to get back to the playoffs again, the offense looking similar to what it did in 2016, as close to that as you possibly can be, I think is going to be critical. I don't think you can go backwards and try to find a replacement for Austin Hooper, the tight end position. As our commenter on YouTube mentioned, JJ Blue, as our commenter mentioned, I think you've got to bring Hooper back in the mix for next season.
Today you cannot, because that salary cap, they don't have any room to do it. Will they find room? Yes, and they will find room soon. That means, like every business, you got to get rid of something to get something. So you're going to see some casualties in the next couple of months or so, but you do have to sign him back.
Yeah, and this is what. When it comes to the NFL, this is the least fun part of the conversation because, as a fan, when your organization brings someone in, you want to be able to follow their career.
Right.
And as they get better, you want to be able to support them going forward. Sometimes in the NFL, though, look at the New England Patriots as an example of this. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been an example of this. The smart teams, the well-run teams, the generational teams, it seems like the more expensive you get, the more the smart teams are sometimes looking to move away from you and find a cheaper option. As a player yourself, I'm sure that can be an aggravating thing. I think it can be aggravating for fans as well. In Atlanta's case, though, I don't think they have that luxury. They've got to move around what they can to make sure they get Hooper re-signed. Otherwise, I don't know how you field as competent in offense without him.
Well, at the end of the day, the Falcons have created something. This brotherhood mantra that they've created, and I think that all of them want to stay together. And they would be disappointed if one of the brothers had to leave. That's been a big contributor to this football team. They're gonna have to find a way to get it done, and they will. I'm not worried about that. They will, but we knew this day was gonna come for some of the players 3 years ago when they had all these young players, and then you were spending money on some of your franchise guys, and you knew this day was coming. But And they knew it too. And they are creative enough and smart enough to move money around and do some things creatively to sign him back and sign some free agents in the future.
Martavius Hill on Facebook says, at this point, I don't trust Thomas Dimitroff. And listen, Terrence, there's an element of this that's just a fact that Atlanta missed the playoff again this year. Lines of scrimmage in particular, offensive and defensive line during the season had their issues. A lot of that is going to get laid at the feet of the general manager. Arthur Blank still trusts Thomas Dimitroff, so he chose to bring him back. I think one of the ways in which Dimitroff can re-earn the trust of fans like Martavius and other fans who may feel the same way that he does here in our Facebook comment section. Find a way to re-sign Hooper without having to make a lot of other sacrifices, other plays. Even if you stay relatively tight with the cap, we've seen other teams find a way to kind of stay tight over the course of a couple of years, and they just seem to sort of get through it and manage that. But find a way, an effective way to bring back Hooper without costing you too much on the other side, or make really good, judicious decisions about who you do move away from. Because you're going to have to, as Terrence said, you're going to have to part ways with somebody. For a general manager who may have a certain degree of broken trust with his fan base right now, this offseason and how it ushers in some more success in the upcoming season, that would be a great way to rebuild that trust. Re-sign the free agents that are out there that Falcons fans say, we got to have this guy back, make good decisions about the guys that you move on from, and suddenly this lack of trust that Martavius says that he has with Dimitroff, you can bring that back.
You can bring that back. If you sign Hooper, you better do something creatively in the draft. Now, this may not be popular whatsoever. If you think you're at that point right now that you can make a playoff run, win a division, and either get deep into the playoff NFC championship game, you sign Hooper back. This is crazy, but it could happen. You have the number 16 pick in the draft? Sure. Get out of it. Trade it and get you 3 number 3s,
I love
3 number 4s, and now you save money, but now you're drafting players that thought, I should have been in the first round. And they're going to play hard for you, and they're going to make that team, and they're going to play because they want to prove to you that I should have been drafted in the first or second round, and they're going to play for you because they're looking for a big payday.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We mentioned before, what do smart teams do? Right. When smart teams have a chance to trade back, they typically do so. Now, if you see the draft order right there, Atlanta sitting at 16, really this is to a degree bad luck because they just ended up getting the short end compared to the other 7 and 9s because of what Atlanta had going for from a strength of schedule standpoint. End up kind of pushing them down the draft. But when you look at that opportunity, even though 16 is a pick that still has pretty good value overall, if the goal is to find capable starters, as many as you can during a draft, moving past 16 to later in the first round, picking up some capital along the way, extra picks, as you said. If you're looking to fill a number of holes in your roster, that's always going to be the best overall decision. And frankly, one of the ways in which I think Atlanta has gotten it wrong more often than not is this hasn't been a trade back organization. Too often it's been a trade up organization.
Right.
Now, sometimes that really works for you. Obviously, trading up to get Julio Jones, everyone's glad to have him. Remains to be seen if a trade up for a guy like Caleb McGarry is going to end up being a good thing overall. But Atlanta, for the most part, has been a trade up type of team. That's a little bit like racking up a bunch of credit card debt. Right. It's fun today, but someday that bill is coming due. And when you got fewer third and fourth round picks than your competition, that's when that price is really paid.
Right. That because if you go third, fourth rounder, when those contracts is up, the jump is not as high. But when you go first rounder and when he comes in, that contract is high, and then 5-6 years from now, that jump is even higher. And then you have to make another decision with someone else. But at the end of the day, I think that what is the value at 16? What is that player at 16 that's going to make you, is that 16th pick, that player at 16 going to make you that much better that is going to take you as a division champion or to the Super Bowl? I can't answer that. But as looking at the draft right now, I don't see a guy that drafting at 16 is going to take you that place.
I think it's an interesting point. Why don't we transition the conversation to that? It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. That's former Falcons wide receiver Terrence Mathis. My name is Brandon Adams. It's great to have you here today. So Terrence asked the question of what truly is the value of the number 16 pick? Now this, I should point out, it's not an argument in favor of trading up or trading back or anything else, but it does lead us into the discussion of would Atlanta, and by the way, back during the season, Terrence, we talk about this all the time, would Atlanta have been better off losing some of the games that it won so it would have gotten a higher draft pick, or did Atlanta benefit from going on a winning streak near the end of the year, potentially setting itself up for some momentum for 2020? There was an interesting article about that at AtlantaFalcons.com by Will McFadden, and you asked, what's the 16th pick work? And that's one of the things that Will McFadden kind of also talked about there. Let me read you just a couple sentences here. He says, since the 2000 draft, there have been 151 Pro Bowlers drafted within the top 15 picks, an average of 7.55 per year. Right. For picks 16 through 32, the number of Pro Bowlers selected is 97, an average of 4.85 per year. So he says there are about 3 more Pro Bowlers coming from the first half of the draft than the second half of the draft, but there are still roughly 5 Pro Bowlers every single year found after the first 15 picks. So from that standpoint, Atlanta picking like right in the middle of the first round is a little bit of a line of demarcation. You would certainly expect the picks ahead of that to be a little easier to find a Pro Bowler. But according to the research that Will McFadden does here, the chances of finding a Pro Bowler in that second half, you still see about 5 of those each year. So from that standpoint, the number 16 pick from Atlanta still has a good degree of value and still has a reasonable chance of not only finding a capable starter, but maybe finding someone who becomes enough of a top-end starter that they can be a Pro Bowler.
Well, at the end of the day, wherever you pick, the guy has to fit in with what you do. You can't pick because of the eye test or all the measurables whatsoever. Does he fit into the offense or defensive scheme that we have? Will he fit in with the other brothers in that locker room? And that's key. That's how you gel. That's how you gel as a team, and that's how you should draft. You know, at the end of the day, my GM hat on. I don't know. I don't know if I draft right there. I don't know, because I think I have enough pieces right there where we're okay. Yes, we need a pass rush defensive end, but is that a rookie?
Right.
You know, I don't know if there's any, after the kid from Ohio State goes, what do you have left? You don't have the Bosa brothers in the draft.
That's exactly right.
So at the end of the day, do you go out in free agency and get one, trade out of that 16th pick, get some more value, save some more money? What do you do there?
Well, you mentioned Chase Young from Ohio State. That was one of the names that was out there when Falcons fans were saying, hey, you'd be better off losing than winning. You'd be better off losing than winning. Better off losing than winning. Well, that's kind of the point that Will McFadden arrived at Falcons.com as well, about how maybe this end-of-season momentum could be more valuable than some people realize, because what he really looked at is for teams that had a veteran coach, someone like, say, year 4, year 5, who had gotten off to like a 1-7 or 2-6 start and then kind of won games near the end of that season, what he really came to the conclusion of, there are really about 5 teams since the league went to a 16-game schedule that kind of match the situation with the Falcons right now. You have the 87 Rams that started 1-7, but won 5 of their last 7 games. The next season, they went 10-6, made the playoff. 88 Redskins started 1-7 like the Falcons did this year, won 5 of their final 7 games, and then made the playoffs going 10-6. The 98 Redskins started 1-7 that year, finished 6-10, won 6 of their final 8, did go 10-6, make the playoffs. You had some losing teams that did not match that momentum very well. For instance, the 2011 Cardinals, the 2007 Bengals. So you see kind of a mixed bag here of when teams have been where Atlanta was, ugly first half, really good second half. They found a way to kind of bounce back and make the playoffs. Others did not. You played on a team that's very similar to this. Your 1997 team, rough start to begin with, really good second half. The following year, 14-2, won the NFC. How much did that second half of that 97 season play into what you guys were able to do?
It was huge. We won 5 of the last 7. And with a veteran football team, so going into the next season, it was optimistic. It was one of those things that, hey, if we stick together and we stay together, we can do some good things. And it did. It happened for us, and we stuck together with a lot of veterans around and some young guys who contributed that year. But we pulled it off. Well, as you see it, we went 14-2, won the NFC Championship. Unfortunately, we lost in the Super Bowl. I wish I had a Super Bowl. Right?
Yeah, I know. Listen,
hey, but, listen,
you played in that game. Yeah, you played in that game.
There's some Hall of Famers that have never played in the Super Bowl.
That's exactly right.
Have a bust and can't.
That's exactly right.
So, I was blessed to do that.
I agree with something that Chris Clark is saying in our Facebook comment section, that you could make a comparison between Atlanta 1-7 start this year, a nice conclusion to the second half, and say it's a little bit like this team from this year, that team from that year, and that may give you hope. But as Chris points out, to talk big about the Falcons' second half in the 2019 season almost forgets, as Chris points out, Atlanta also won 3 straight to close the 2018 season. And people said, hey, this just proves Atlanta's set up for success for 2019. And honestly, we saw an Atlanta team that was for the most part lost for most of those first few games of this year. So Chris may have the best point of all of, if you're going to talk about second halves carrying over, you do have to point out that last year's...
You got to look at the dynamics of what happened. The middle of your defense was hurt. You lost your starting safety for the year. Tevin Campbell goes to San Francisco. You lose these guys that was part of that winning in 2018, and they move on to other places. So that continuity is gone. You draft. You got 2 young guys playing offensive line. You lose some guys, some veteran guys on the offensive line. That's what happened. What I'm trying to say, if you keep this team together and add 1 or 2 pieces, they're going to be fine. You don't have to a complete overhaul with this football team. This football team is ready-made for the playoffs and to go far in the playoffs. You just need that one guy, that one dude that you go, aha. That's what we've been lacking right there.
I think that's a good point. Philip Carey also kind of talking about that as well in our YouTube comment section, that really we always kind of harken back to that Super Bowl team in 2016, but to come back the following year, and I know this is a somewhat meager accomplishment, but to come back that following year, this is still an organization that won a playoff game on the road just a couple of years ago. Went to L.A., beat the Rams, came very close to beating the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that ended up winning the Super Bowl in that season. That, when you have 2 non-playoff years, it can seem like you're just in the swamp of the NFL.
Like 10 years.
It seems like a long time. But even putting aside the NFC win of 2016, this team's only a couple years removed from having won a playoff game on the road, and a lot of the nucleus that made that happen is still here. Now listen, this is also an organization that's got a lot of holes on its roster on both sides of the ball. I'm not going to sugarcoat that either. But as you said, you sprinkle in a player here, a player there, what is there currently, and I think there is still that chance for some success, that chance to recapture that. We see this happen in the NFL all the time anyway. You don't see the same 6 teams make the playoffs in the NFC every single season.
Well, Falcons is not a team where we're not in a situation right now where we can say, okay, we're 2 or 3 years away, and we're going to build for 2 or 3 years away. No, it's now. Right now, don't be afraid to go out and get a free agent that may only give you 1 or 2 years, or go out and get a guy who's only going to rush on 3rd down. Don't be afraid to do that. Go out and get a guy that's going to make a difference, that's going to give you, who can win. Think about this. You go get a guy who can win 2 games by himself.
Right.
We're right there.
Yeah.
We're right there.
Yeah.
So, I love this football team. And they have great, I'm not going to even say potential. They are there.
Yeah.
They just, like we said, if we put a guy here and put a guy there, a veteran guy here or there, whatsoever, you don't have to say, well, let's build for the future, let's draft them. Because this team is not that.
That's right.
This team is a veteran or two away from being very, very good.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point, and it kind of brings to mind to me, we're talking about, does end-of-season momentum matter? Will McFadden wrote about that at AtlantaFalcons.com. I think ultimately the thing that matters the most, and if you're a Falcon fan looking for a reason to be hopeful for the upcoming season, to me it's not the fact that you went 6-2 to close out the 2019 season, and it really might not even be the fact that you have the number 16 overall pick.
Right.
It's, as Terrence said, can you find an inexpensive veteran in free agency and have that guy play better than expected?
Right.
Can you hit on a fourth-round draft pick and have that guy as a rookie play better than expected? Right. For Atlanta to kind of close the gap between the best in the NFC South, the best in the NFC, it's really going to be those cheaper options. Right. In addition to your, obviously, 3 pretty high draft picks, but whether it be kind of a below-the-radar free agent acquisition or a later draft pick, somebody like that kind of exploding onto the scene, that really may be the difference maker.
There's some guys out there that will love to set up shop here in Atlanta. It's a beautiful city, a beautiful place, beautiful stadium, great people, great food, all those things. A veteran guy would love to finish his career here, especially a guy who hasn't had a lot of success in winning games, but been successful on the field, Pro Bowler, All-Pro, would love to come and finish his career here with a division championship, an NFC championship, and a Super Bowl championship.
It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. That's the former Falcon Terrence Mathis in for Chuck Smith here today. Speaking of some of those guys Atlanta might be able to get, thought it might be fun to talk about this for a minute. Our buddy D. Orlando Ledbetter from the AJC, keeping in mind that the national championship game in college football is tonight, gave us 5 names to look at in terms of names the Falcons might be interested in drafting at various spots in the draft, who you can see play in the national championship game tonight. And Terrence, if you don't mind, I want to mention a couple of these names right now. First of all, this is one of the most interesting players in college football, just given the fact that he wasn't really an elite recruit, but he's become a dominant player. That's the linebacker from Clemson, Isaiah Simmons. And one of the things that you've seen Clemson do so well, Terrence, is success with those front 7 guys. A lot of defensive linemen, certainly, but linebackers not that far behind. Brent Venables has been a guy as defensive coordinator that Clemson's just been lucky enough to hold on to. When you talk about taking a defender from Clemson, now for Atlanta's case, you've had mixed results. Obviously, Vic Beasley's at times led something to be desired. Grady Jarrett, he's as good at his position as anybody in the National Football League. But when you take someone from Clemson, like potentially Simmons is going to be for somebody in the NFL, they've been well coached, they've played in big games. I think the idea of Simmons potentially in a Falcon uniform would be the kind of thing that a lot of Falcons fans would be excited about.
Well, you're going to get a lot from this kid.
Yeah.
This kid can play safety. He can play linebacker. He can play defensive end. He can play outside linebacker, middle linebacker. He can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
He can cover the tight end. He can cover a running back. I don't know if he can't cover a slot receiver.
Right.
But this is a football player that can do everything and do all things for you. And he'll be a great addition for this team.
He also mentions a couple of the LSU defensive backs. One I used to be really high on. Admittedly, now I'm not quite as high as I was. Christian Fulton, the cornerback, Grant Delpit, the safety. Delpit actually ends up winning the Thorpe Award as the nation's best defensive back. But if you really watched Delpit this year, it almost seemed like that level of play took a little bit of a dip. I mean, the best LSU defensive back is Derek Stingley, the freshman. So he's not draft eligible. So his name's not going to show up on a list like this. But it's kind of funny that, Delpit got all of the attention, and obviously where drafted, Fulton could potentially have some value for Atlanta. But that LSU secondary was really led by the freshman Stingley, and at one point in time, I loved the idea of the Falcons getting involved with the safety like Delpit because I thought he had a tremendous season in 2018. But the Delpit I saw in 2019, for whatever reason, was just not quite that same guy.
Well, he got banged up early.
Yeah.
If you notice, I forgot what game it was. He had the ankle injury, and he came back slowly. But he played well towards the end. I think, a guy like that know he's going to be a high draft pick. Sometimes what happens is you play a little cautiously because you get an injury early and you go, oh, my goodness, this might dip my draft stock.
Yeah.
So you kind of play a little more cautiously, trying not to hurt yourself, to hurt your stock value, your draft value.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's playing in the national championship game, and I expect him to play well.
Couple other names here from our buddy D-Led. You can read this whole story at AJC.com. A good way to preview tonight's national championship. They both come from Clemson. One actually played his high school football right here in the Atlanta area. That's Tremaine Ankrum, who's a tackle for the Tigers, probably a guard in the National Football League. And to go back to some of our commenters a little earlier, for those who want to see Atlanta continue to work to address that left guard situation, Ankrum's a guy that would certainly give you a chance to do that if you can afford to spend another draft pick on an offensive lineman.
He's gonna be a good football player for somebody, but not for us right now.
Yeah.
We don't need that right now. He's gonna be a good football player. He's gonna be drafted high, but right now I think we're good where we are offensive line wise. I think these younger guys, they'll be ready to play. They got a season under their belt, and like I said, if you can go out and get a guy in free agency, he may be a guy that's with 4 years of NFL experience, or 5 years of NFL experience better than 0 NFL experience. So I think that's what you have to do.
The other name that D-Led mentions is Travis Etienne, the running back from Clemson. I got to tell you this, Terrence. If I'm Thomas Dimitroff, if I'm Dan Quinn, if I'm sitting there with the second-round pick, one of those two second-round picks that I have, if I see Etienne sitting right there, I couldn't say no. Could not say no. I think the Devontae Freeman, I think you need to move on from Freeman. I think that era is over. You know, I saw Etienne against the Ohio State defense. Those are guys that are like number of top 5, top 10 type picks. And he looked like the most explosive player on a field that included Chase Young and included Jeffrey Okudah. Etienne at times looked like the most explosive player on that field. I wouldn't have thought I would be as in favor of Atlanta drafting a running back in the second round as I've turned out to be. I think if Etienne was there, I think you'd have to take him.
Well, in my draft, first round, you got to go defensive end. Second round, you have to go running back. My third round, you have to go quarterback. So if Etienne is sitting in there in the second round, you have to take him. He's physical. He's explosive. He runs with careless abandon. You know, it's one of those things that you love to see this guy because it seems like every time he touches the ball, he wants to score.
Yeah.
And that's what you want from a running back.
And compare him to, like I say, a guy like Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin who's gotten a lot of carries during his career with the Badgers. You know, Clemson, a little bit like Georgia and some of these other teams, they've given carries to other backs. Lynn-J Dixon's got some carries. Even though Etienne's been the clear number one running back, you know, they find a way to get other running backs involved, which means for the team that drafts Etienne, if it were to be the Falcons, you're getting a running back that has not used up all the tread on his tires.
That's just like going to buy a used car.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you want to go get one that with low mileage, a great body, everything works well, but you still want low mileage on that car because you want to be able to drive it for a long period of time. You know, you don't want to go get a car that's, it's beautiful, it's well conditioned, but it has a lot of miles on it. You know, I'm not going to be able to use that for long.
Sure.
So that's how you got to draft the running back. The guy that's not being used a lot is the guy that you want in your locker room.
That's exactly right. It's Terrence Mathis, former Atlanta Falcon. My name is Brandon Adams. Thanks for being here as part of AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Of course, Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. If you're getting together, watch the national championship game tonight. Of course, that'd be a great choice to enjoy yourself with that. And of course, next weekend, we have conference championship games around the NFL. They are now set after a busy weekend of really wild action. Why don't we recap a couple of these here right now? We'll show you the scores from the NFC on Saturday, maybe the least eventful of all the games. 49ers handled things with the Vikings. Packers yesterday do hold on to beat the Seattle Seahawks. Chiefs, amazing come-from-behind win to knock off the Houston Texans. And, of course, the surprise of all, really the two AFC games with the real talkers here because Tennessee, from the word go, dominated the Baltimore Ravens. What stood out to you? What was interesting to you about the 4 divisional games we saw this weekend?
Well, I wasn't surprised with the 49ers win over the Vikings. You know, the Packers Seahawks game, you know, I picked Seattle to win. It was surprisingly, we kind of knew whoever had the ball last was going to win that game. And at the end of the day, the Seahawks couldn't get off the field on third down. You know, and third and long at that. And the two times in the fourth quarter when you needed stops on third and long, you didn't get it done. And that's the 2 plays, basically part of 5 plays in that game that lost you the football game.
You know, Lamar Jackson's been the talk of the NFL this year, and nothing about the playoff loss changes the things that he's done. This early in his NFL career to be playing as well as he has is pretty remarkable. But 0-2 now in the playoffs, and this was an ugly exit for a team that was a big favorite and playing at home. Is it a blemish on Jackson's MVP season, which he's likely going to be? Is it a blemish on his season? They got manhandled in the playoff the way they did in really a fashion that no one could have seen coming?
Well, this is the part I don't like about it. You look online, you look on Twitter, you look on all these social medias, and Lamar Jackson's getting bashed for losing a football game. He didn't lose that game by himself. He had 6 or 7 drops in that game. He still threw for over 300 yards. He still rushed for 100 yards in that game. He had some bad turnovers, but that's not what he's made to do, is throw the ball 50 plus times a game. The running game failed them whatsoever, and they got behind, so they had to throw the football. The defense failed them, stopping the run failed them. So, one man does not win a football game, and one man does not lose a football game. It does not diminish his MVP season at all.
So now we do know our conference championship games. In fact, we'll show those to you here. Packers will take on the 49ers. That's the late game on Sunday. The early one's going to be Titans and Chiefs. When you look at those matchups there, what's your early thought on what the Super Bowl matchup's likely to be?
Ooh, Packers and 49ers is a classic matchup.
It is a classic matchup.
For years and years with Brett Favre and Steve Young.
You're right.
So that's a classic matchup right there, and that's going to be a great football game right there. I think that the 49ers have an edge because they're playing at home. But I think you never count Aaron Rodgers out.
That's right.
He for some reason, he finds a way to get it done. Now, this Titans and Chiefs game right here, this is an interesting matchup because the Titans right now is riding a high.
Yeah.
They've beaten 2 really good football teams.
Doing it with a running game, too.
They beat the Patriots, they beat the Ravens, and they have a running game.
Yeah.
If you have a running game in Kansas City in cold weather, you have an opportunity to win. But if I had to pick, I'm going to have to go with the Packers and the Chiefs.
Sounds like a pretty good pick to me. If anything, I'm sort of fascinated by the fact that Tennessee's just doing a little bit different way. Now, Tannehill had a good season playing quarterback for the Titans, but the playoffs, from a passing standpoint, he really hasn't shown up in a big way yet. They've just been leaning heavily on Derrick Henry, and I mean heavily leaning on him. So the standpoint that they're the one team, now San Francisco wants to run it too, but the standpoint that, and really Green Bay's more of a running team now than people realize, but in terms of leaning so heavily on Derrick Henry, that's just such a different kind of approach compared to the way that a lot of NFL teams do this, especially the team that they're going to be playing the AFC title game, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, you know, some people are going to say, well, they're going to wear Derrick out. They're going to wear Derrick out. They're running him way too much. This is the playoffs, man.
Yeah.
This is
You'll worry about that later.
You'll worry about that later. Run him as much as you can if it's effective. But, if you're the Chief, you're going to try to stop that running game and try to have 10 and he'll beat you. Can he do it? He has some weapons, but I don't know. But, at the end of the day, if you can give it to that 230, 40-pound running back, do it.
Great stuff from Terrence Mathis. Appreciate you being on the show today.
Man, thank you.
Always good to hear from you. And by the way, best of luck to your Pinecrest team as they get ready for 2020. We
Yes.
appreciate the impact you're making on high school players here in our community.
Thank you. I
Appreciate all of you being with us here for AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite as well. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll be back on Friday at 1 p.m. looking ahead at those 2 conference championship games on Sunday. Also more of the preparations for the Falcons in the 2020 draft and how Atlanta hopes to get back to the postseason next year. We'll do all that with you on Friday at 1 p.m. Look forward to talking to you then. AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Have a great week, everybody.